What was the biggest bullet you dodged? A few years ago I had pneumonia, but my whole family insisted that it was just postnasal drip, which runs in the family. After a week or two I woke up in the middle of the night when I couldn't feel my arm. After I got to the ER, the doctor said that it was the worst he'd ever seen, and he was surprised I wasn't dead. I had 3 pounds of mucus cut out of my lungs and another 2 weeks in the hospital siphoning out the rest. For 3 months afterwards I could barely walk half a mile without starting to pee butt out, and I still can't run for more than 200 to 300 yards without collapsing. Have you looked into respiratory therapy to try to build yourself back up to running? I'm sorry you've had to deal with this. Many years ago, my flight had just landed at Chicago O'Hare and the plane was taxiing when the pilot suddenly slammed on the brakes. People were literally thrown forward against the seat in front of them. A few seconds later, another plane, taking off I think, went screaming by right in front of us. No explanation was given, though our imaginations provided a lot of gory details. Just regular Chicago drivers. It's do or die on the Dan Ryan. Around 30, 0 pounds. I was driving with my wife in town one snowy evening, and we had pulled up to a stoplight. I happened to glance up at the rear view mirror and saw a city bus heading towards us and rotating sideways. I hit the gas and pulled ahead into the intersection and left into the turning lane. And less than a second later, the bus went sliding through right where our car was. It came to a stop on the other side of the intersection and fortunately didn't hit anything. But 1 second or 2 feet difference and we would have had some nice spinal injuries. I once took care of a couple in a rehab facility who was in the accident that you narrowly avoided. Bus on a snowy road slid into them at an intersection. They had matching spinal cord injuries that resulted in them both being paralyzed from the waist down. Yeah, really lucky. As a kid, after running errands in town with my mom, I was climbing into the backseat of our family station wagon. A semi-truck hit a power line pole down the street causing the still live wire to fall, bounce off the roof of the car and hang across the open door just a foot or two above my legs. Raised Catholic, I wondered for a while after if I had actually died that day and that the rest of what I thought was my life was my purgatory. Poor you. As a kid, I often had a particular nightmare about the apocalypse and doomsday when I was little, because the church talked about the end of days and the second coming of God. I had an aunt who would make us watch movies about such topics. I sometimes still have that dream, always the same dream, since I was little. My dad was a truck driver in the oil field in Canada. He worked a lot of long hours, and every single day. So on weekends he would bring me and my younger brother on some of his jobs. We were on location and my little brother, 3 years, and me, 10 years, were waiting for him playing in cab of truck. My little brother opened the passenger door and my little arms closed it. Job's done. We start our trek home going about 35 km/h and the door flies open and I get sucked out of truck. I remember doing about 10 backflips as I tumbled out, hitting the ground on my back a few times and rolling my way to a stop. I stood up before the truck was even stopped in absolute shock. Next thing I see my dad looking for me and he burst into tears. First time I ever seen him cry. I'm 33 now and he still won't talk to me about it. Luckily the rig was in a farmer's field. So when we were leaving I landed on softer dirt. Not a single scratch on me. Dad thought he ran over me with trailer. Don't think we ever went to work with dad again. I work for the company now. I fell out of a farm truck with I was about 8. Going about 35 down a just out of town stretch of highway. I bounced a few times and came to a stop just about to the shoulder of the road. I remember overwhelming certainty that I was going to die, and I rolled to the ditch. Missed getting run over by about 10 inches. Got up. My mom had come back for me and immediately took me to the ER where I was given a total clean bill of health. Not a bump, though I did have a nasty bruise where I hit the road initially. Who knew kids were made of rubber? Not changing jobs in early 2020 would have been a short-lived promotion after early restructuring and layoffs. I changed jobs March 9th, 2020. 2 days later my city shut down and everyone was sent to work from home. My new company committed to 0 covered layoffs. The company I left laid off about 80% of my department. Dodged a bullet, haha. Same thing. Mine committed to 0 covered layoffs. Apparently restructuring layoffs were fair game though. A friend had lost his job under suspicious circumstances. A few weeks later he asked me to take him to the bank. As I got near to pick him up I caught a train. He called to say never mind, he would get someone else. A few days later a friend sent out a message to a large number of our friends. This guy lost his job and was running a check cashing con. Can you cash this check for me? I'll pay you $50 if you do. The check is $500. He has no backing funds. You eat the whole amount. He did this to several friends in a few days to about a few grand and was about to skip town when the cops got him. Halfway through this I was thinking you dodged being an unknown getaway driver for a bank robbery. Same here. Was slightly disappointed. Not me, but I had a field service engineer working on one of my big robotic liquid handlers. He decided to buy the safety pin that prevents the heads from moving while the cover is open. While he had a diagnostic program queued up on the computer, what he didn't know was that the instant he reinserted the safety pin the machine would execute the queued instructions and start moving. And he had a hand inside it right in the danger zone. I grabbed his shoulder and yanked his hand out an instant before it was crushed. He stopped ignoring me when I told him to stop bypassing safety lockouts to save a few minutes. Wow. I'm sure this guy isn't completely responsible for you guys putting a safety system in place, but it sounds like he certainly had a hand in it. Was going to move to a different apartment complex last month. Got injured at work and lost hours. Therefore, couldn't come up with the deposit money in time. Last week the Mashad was cooking meth and caught the building on fire. Edit, my username. My current apartment complex is notorious in my city for having elevator troubles. So in reality, username does check out. Also, you could say I dodged 2 bullets. 1. The fire. 2. I know bad stuff happens everywhere blah blah blah, but the new place really didn't strike me as the kind of place where meth heads live. So I guess avoiding those kind of people for neighbors was dodging a bullet in itself. My newborn needed to be rushed to a super high level NICU to be put into a state of induced hypothermia because he only had hours before he would suffer permanent brain damage. I live in a small town in the middle of nowhere. The small town next door just barely upgraded their hospital to have that hypothermia suite. One of only a few in Texas. He's doing great. No sign of any damage. Our daughter is a NICU baby too. The only piece of unsolicited advice I will ever give expecting parents is when you're checking out hospitals, make sure to check out the NICU and select a hospital with a good one. You probably won't need it, but if you do you'll be happy it's there. Daughter is 4 now, and a healthy little spitfire. Glad your son is too. My twin brother and I were expected to be born around May 27th. If I remember correctly, we were born April 3rd. Spent weeks in the NICU with respiratory problems, jaundice, and a whole host of other issues. 16 years later, and we are both just fine. I stayed up all night before a day trip to Hong Kong. You know that days when you haven't slept. You're just kinda robotic and doing the human stuff. Nearly zero awareness of anything. Well, I went across the street and my friend behind me snatched my shoulder and yanked me backwards just in time to feel the whoosh of a double-decker bus breezing past us. I just looked at him like oh, thanks man, and it took a whole extra minute for my brain to process I would be fucking dead had he not grabbed me. I think I saved a baby's life once. It was in a city center, crossing a main road with a wild bunch of other people. The dad was pulling the pram behind him onto the pavement while he texted on his phone. And the dumb duck didn't realize he'd left the pram just there on the road while he himself was on the pavement. Everyone kinda ignored it while the traffic lights kept that section of road clear, but then the lights changed and the ducking moron still hadn't looked up from his phone while a huge double-decker was bearing down on his offspring. Out of the whole crowd I was the only one to push forward and pull the pram onto the pavement. The complete imbecile gave a grunt of surprise and dropped his phone as the bus whooshed past, and he realized he'd utterly failed in his parenting responsibilities, which was some consolation. I hope it shattered. Thanks y'all for the praise. I don't feel good about the situation though. Just seething fury. And to those who told me I should have let the baby die, go eat a takeaway bag of shit on your way to a therapist. About why the bus driver didn't stop, I honestly have no idea. There were a few seconds between me pulling the pram back and my memory of the bus going by. Maybe he realized it would be fine. Or maybe he was driving automatically and hadn't noticed. Whatever. I'm just glad I didn't have to see a baby die painfully that day. Forget the phone shattering. I'd hope he reflects on that moment often. I lost my favorite phone that day. Apostrophe. That's why my next kid will be named Gorilla Glass. Hubs, my sister and I were hanging out around my parents' house on a very boring 4th of July. We decided to wash my husband's new car sitting in the driveway because it was hot out and an excuse to play in the house. We were literally walking out the front door and I said, hey, we should eat lunch before we get all wet and stuff. And everyone agreed. So we turned around and went back inside. I was warming up something in the microwave, a hot pocket I think. And all of a sudden I hear the loudest bang I think I've ever heard. From the direction of the front door. Hubs and I look at each other wide-eyed and run outside. I was greeted by the back end of a Crown Vic. Smoking something fierce. Plowed into the tree in the middle of our yard. For a split second I was just stunned. Then, screamed to my sister inside to call 911. I looked over to the driveway at the car we had been planning to wash just 5 minutes ago. Totaled. Completely totaled. Brand new 2011 G6. Destroyed. Guy hit it so hard it did a complete 90-degree turn across the driveway. He actually hit it so hard, it ended up ricocheting and hitting the other cars in the driveway, mauling 2 other cars. Yard was fucked. Crown Vic was fucked. Tree was fucked. We immediately assumed it was drunk driving. Being the 4th and all, I went over to the driver's side and found a very old man. Very bewildered, unable to comprehend what I was saying but conscious. I will never forget the look he gave me, confused, helpless, scared. I was on the line with the paramedics as they sent over the ambulances and tried my best to follow their instructions. My sister was only 14 at the time, so I handled the call. Turns out dude was diabetic and had passed out behind the wheel due to low blood sugar. Hit the gas pedal with his weight as he passed out and was plowing down our residential street at about 65 miles per hour. He jumped the curb, drove down the sidewalk past another house, then slammed into my husband's car, and subsequently, the tree. If we had been anywhere near that yard/driveway, I have no doubt one or all of us would have been seriously injured or dead. It was sheer dumb luck and timing that saved us. Huge bullet dodged. Or should I say, huge car dodged. I will never judge myself for craving hot pockets again. One day, they just might save my life. I can answer this in a literal way. When I was a child, I was playing video games with my little brother. Well, he found our dad's gun and fired it. No one was hurt, but it scared the shit out of me. My younger brother used to dry fire guns at me, till one time he fired a live one right by my head. Dad came home and wondered why he had a huge black eye. Your younger brother should gotten a black eye the first time he dry fired at you. That shit isn't funny. Just a few weeks ago, my housemate had some guests over. Bruh, it's covered. For his birthday, they got trashed. And the next morning at 7 AM I wake up, and my housemate is barely able to stand. His friend is drunk, but not quite as bad, holding a shotgun with a laser pointer on it, which he proceeded to point at me. This guy had about a foot on me, so I just fucked right off and left for the day until he went home. Later, when we were examining the disaster left over from the party, we found lines of cocaine too. So 2 drunk guys who were also high on cocaine were walking around the house at 7 AM with firearms. At one point they even pointed it out the front door on a suburban street. I hate to think what could have happened. I'm a 5'6" chick who couldn't have done anything if either of those guys decided to do something to me or threaten me with that gun. I noped right the duck out and am living in a new place just over a month later. Jesus. Sounds like you're well out of that hellhole. I survived a rocket attack that landed about 10 meters from me, very close to where we were standing. We were so close to the launch site that the warning alarm came after the rocket had already impacted. Thankfully, we were able to dive under a vehicle for some shelter and the 3 of us made it through unscathed. Israel. Yep. When my great aunt passed away, I was helping to clean out her house. I'm just dragging everything out of the basement and suddenly my dad is like, "Whoa, put that down gently and let's move away from here." So I put the weird metal tube type thing I'm carrying down and get out of there. Turns out it's a mortar shell from when my aunt worked in a munitions factory during WWII. Bomb squad came and took it away. I interviewed for a job that I wanted desperately in August 2019. After the initial phone interview, I went in for an in-person interview at 4 PM on a Wednesday. I had a rejection in my inbox by 8 PM and was completely gutted. Then 2020 happened and they laid off 60% of their staff and will probably go under. I'm thankful for that rejection every day. I needed this perspective. I'm currently in agony waiting to hear the results of 2 interviews for different places. I'd be thrilled with either job, but gotta remind myself that if neither pan out, well, maybe I dodged a bullet. I can relate to that so much. I was absolutely miserable in my job and had 3 opportunities. This one, another second round interview with a different company, and had just submitted an application for an expat assignment with my current company. I figured one of them had to work out. I was rejected from all 3 in the span of a week and a half, and it was awful. I absolutely hate when people say everything happens for a reason, because it doesn't. But if my options were to be laid off long term, or else stuck in Germany with no local friends, family, or any way back to the US due to COVID, it probably worked out for the best. My mother left me in one state and went back to my abusive stepfather. She tried to get me to drop out of my senior year at HS, move back to their state and just get my jet. They wanted a live-in babysitter, cook and maid. I was so lucky my grandparents let me move in with them and finish school. Edit. Thanks for all the love, guys. For those who have asked, I'm doing great. I've gone no contact with my mother and stepfather. They're still together, and it's been one of the most healthy decisions I've made. My husband and my kids are amazing, and she's missing out big time. My grandparents are alive and well, and are still involved in our lives. Thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe for more videos.